fun and frivolity with mathematics, right? Okay, again, algebra toolbox. This is going to give you the, you know, basic tools for dealing with the things that you need to deal with in this chapter. Now, these things here should not be even remotely an issue. You guys should understand these concepts without question at this point in your life. You know, you're going to add, subtract, multiply, and divide the same thing to both sides of an equation without changing anything whatsoever. And the substitution. This is a little bit harder for some people to understand because this idea that something can just pull out and be replaced by something else because it doesn't quite look the same bothers people. This idea of the substitution property, as long as something is equal to something else, they are the same, as long as we set that mathematically up. So like when I got y is equal to 3x, that means from this point forward, whenever I'm dealing with anything with this, y is always going to be the same as 3x. It does not matter whatsoever. If I see 3x, I can replace it with y. If I see y, I can replace it with 3x. Doesn't matter. And some people get a little bothered by that because they don't always look the same. Way too easy, isn't it? Divide by 3, multiply by 5, add 5, divide by 3. Add 5, subtract 2x, divide by 2. The one thing that I recommend that whenever you are working with these is always put the variable to the left-hand side. Okay? It doesn't matter if it's quicker and easier to pop the variable over onto the right side and solve. Just make sure that you go through and flip it around so that you have what your variable is equal to. Anyhow, back to this again. Part of the reason that I say that is to make sure that you have it on the left-hand side, because when we start dealing with things in terms of function notation, we generally have the variable or the function listed on the left-hand side and everything else on the right-hand side, so we know what is equal to what. So, again, the mechanics of this, depending upon your perspective and what you see, people will solve these things differently. Now, these are all pretty much cut and dried. You're going to do distributive property and move things back and forth. But sometimes there are issues, like say on A up there, if that on the right hand side, instead of it being 2x minus 7, if it was say 18, then it would make life a lot easier to divide by 3 right away without doing the distributive property. So the more accustomed that you get to doing these type of problems, the easier the tricks are going to come. Little shortcuts that you can make. Okay. Again, these are all pretty much the same things that you have seen in the past. The only real catch that I will ever tell you about on this thing is down here on the last one. Whenever you multiply or divide by an inequality, what must you do? Or divide an inequality by a negative, sorry about that. What must you do to the inequality whenever you multiply or divide by a negative? Well, yeah, if you multiply or divide, the opposite side comes a negative. But what do you do with that inequality? Flip it. Always have to flip it. So if it was started off with greater than, you got to flip it to less than. If it was less than or equal to, it goes to greater than or equal to. Okay? Always keep that in mind. Equality really doesn't matter because you're just saying something is equal to another. But when you're saying something is larger than something else, and you multiply or divide by that negative changes it to an opposite sign, correct? Makes the positive go to negative, negative go to positive. So that ends up flipping around this whole idea of positives, negatives, which is larger than the next. So, continue on here, and we get to the exercises. So, when it comes to doing this, make sure that you write it all out. Get into the habit of this. Granted, you should have had this beforehand, but show all the work, even though you know that number one is simply going to be 2. Okay? Write it out that you're dividing by 3 to both sides, and then write the answer down. You want to have this built into your head so that when you're doing these type of problems, that it's automatically, okay, write it down and go. Don't sit there and allow yourself to do it in your head, because when you get to more complicated stuff, you're not going to be able to. And your steps and your processes for solving is not going to be there as automatically as if you take it and look at it, oh yeah, boom, 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 and done. Make sure that you take the time